Welcome to What You're Making, a podcast about sharing ideas and connecting with the maker community. Your hosts are Alex Adams, an engineer turned furniture maker of type. Hate furniture, and an alien pretending to be a woodworker. Alex Duffey of Duffey Woodcraft. What You're Making is proudly sponsored by Next Wave CNC.
Welcome to What You're Making, a podcast where we talk all about what's on our bench, spotlight makers throughout the community, and remind you that March 11th today is Johnny Appleseed Day. The man and the legend planted 1,200 acres of apple trees throughout the Midwest during the early 1900s. However, almost none of the apples planted were for eating. They were all for making the favorite drink of the day, hard apple cider. The last known tree planted by Johnny is in Nova, Ohio, at over 180 years old. Despite being struck by lightning at least twice, it still produces fruit. Tonight's main topic is choosing the right finish for your project. I'm Alex Duffey, and you can find me on Instagram and on YouTube at Duffey Woodcraft.
And I am Alex Adams over at Type A Furniture on Instagram. And for those two lightning strikes, were they in the same spot?
I don't know. It does say the tree is now split in half, so maybe.
Okay. So it probably, yeah. So lightning does strike twice in the same spot. So
I mean, it's close enough, right? Like the same tree.
Yeah, that's all within the same vicinity. But yeah, we actually have Nebraska used to have a pretty thriving amount of apple orchards in the, which portion of the state was it? It would be the eastern portion of the state, so closer to the Missouri River. So that it used to be like really, really big time down there. I don't know if it was more the like for the drinks like you were talking, or if it was more for just like just regular eating apples straight. Although I do have a funny story to actually tag with this. So the Arbor Day Foundation, I think they do some, what is it called? The Apple Jacks Festival, or is it Apple Jack Festival? So they do still have some orchards in that portion of the state. And so we went with some friends one time. It was like a double date kind of scenario. And you can go and you can pick apples. And so during one of the things, I can't remember what I was doing to annoy my wife, but she grabbed an apple, just existing maybe. I don't know. I was probably throwing stuff at her. But she grabbed an apple, 360, throws it at me, hits me square in the groin. And that was oh my gosh, she was laughing so hard. Our friends were laughing so hard. It was comical, but painful.
I don't have a sound like an ouch sound effect for that.
It was definitely like a kind of scenario. But yeah, I definitely.
Well, you know who else gets hit in the groin by apples?
Microsoft.
Besides them,
our patrons. I don't think we'll have that as a tier, getting hit in the groin with an apple. But if you want to become a patron, go to back up. Patreon.com/whatyourmakingshow, or just search for What You're Making Show within Patreon to find us and become one of the numerous people who support the show for as little as $5. So head on over there and we'll get back to our normally scheduled programming here.
Remember, What You're Making is proudly sponsored by Next Wave CNC. If you're looking for the best CNC on the market today, look no further than a Shark CNC from Next Wave. For the month of March, they are doing a special that you get a bucket starter kit. Depending on which level of unit or machine that you purchase, you get either an SD starter kit for the SD units or an HD starter kit for the HD units. They include bits to get started, clamps, different hold down materials, a dust boot, which everybody needs to get started with right away, a holding pad for your Z-Puck and the Z-Puck, along with other things. So it's a great way to get a whole bunch of accessories all in one kit. So make sure you check it over at nextwavecnc.com.
And you also get a bucket?
And you also get a bucket. It comes all in a bucket. that says it has a big shark on it and says shark.
Oh, do they have little like plastic sharks? So like if there's water in there, they just kind of float in there.
Oh, they should. I'll have to message them and say you need to start 3D printing some sharks.
But one of them has the hat from Woody and Toy Story to call back to the original Toy Story because that would be epic.
That would be epic. Well, on that note,
What you doing?
so this week on my bench, as I get my sign updated here, I am making a whole bunch of things. So I had a last minute order come through from Columbia Footwear. I've worked for them in the past making acrylic sock forms. They wanted some more, so they called me on Friday and were like, Thursday. No, it was Friday. They called me on Friday and said, "Hey, could you get some done for us by next week?" And I was like, "Yeah, except I'm going to be gone from Thursday onward at a show, so I guess I should do them the next 2 days." So it was all hands on deck. Quickly made a whole bunch of acrylic forms for them, and got them all wrapped up over the weekend and sent right back to them. So that was fun. They pay really well, and it's an easy position. I don't have to sand anything. That's the best part. It's just acrylic. I cut out the shapes. So I love it
because the acrylic still has a lot of like chips that are like statically charged, like stick to stuff though, right? So
yeah.
you still have a little like you trade one thing for another.
Yeah. Well, sort. I mean, I look at it because I'm not finishing anything. I'm not sanding anything. The only thing I have to do at the end is I peel off the blue protective plastic and then I just wipe it down with a wet paper towel just to get all of that static charge crap off of it. And that's it. So
I bet peeling is probably the most fun portion of doing that.
It is pretty fun. It is definitely pretty fun. Though it does get frustrating because it builds up so much static charge that I kept shocking myself over and over again. That was frustrating. But I ended up doing about 50 of them for them. I think it was 36. I can do math. 36 plus 12 is 48. So almost 50. They had two different sizes. They have 36 one, 12 of the other. But so that was super fun. I love working for them and doing that. And then I'm also finishing up my filming for the CNC Summit for my class. We're doing a custom cribbage board showing you how to do the track and that whole process in Vectric, but also just walking through that. So I'm really excited about it. If you are interested in the CNC Summit, make sure you check out my Instagram page. Click the link. Early bird pricing ends in March, so it'll go up to $80 a ticket versus the 50 it is right now. So make sure you go get your early bird ticket and use my link, please. So doing that, I've got to edit the video now, which not excited about, but editing your kryptonite.
It's everyone's kryptonite, isn't it?
There are people that do it as a job and I think enjoy it, but I don't know.
I mean,
it's a lot.
I do actually enjoy sanding, so I guess there's got to be
I do
something
too.
that is my issue. So
I actually
I'll
enjoy it too.
take that deal.
Yeah. I just don't enjoy sanding acrylic. Acrylic's nasty. That's why I don't do it. Just cut it out. Anyway, so I did that, and then I have been 3D printing a bunch for my new mesh devices that I've been talked about last session or last episode, but these mesh communication network devices. So I 3D printed a whole bunch of cases for the ones I'm building for people that want handheld units. And I printed I'm showing them on the screen for those who are just listening, a bracket for the back of the solar node. This is a piece of because I'm upgrading a couple of pieces, but it'll have a solar panel right here, and then this will be on the electrical pole of where I'm going to be putting it. So I've been printing a whole bunch of parts and stuff for them. I've deployed 2 nodes so far, and I have another 4 I'm going to deploy. But I finally have got connected to the whole wide mesh and it's exciting. There's a whole bunch of people chatting throughout Portland and Seattle, and it's kind of fun. Just other nerds talking on text over this app. It's fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you had
and
mentioned
then
earthquake stuff as part of the like thing, right?
yeah, the main part of this is that it's emergency communication. So the idea is when the cell towers go down and you
Right.
can't access the internet or anything, you have a way to still text and communicate with one another and get emergency services and so on. And so that's what this whole thing is. It uses the same frequency as ham radio, but it is all digital now by an app on the phone. So
Yeah, because over this weekend we actually had an earthquake in Nebraska, a 4.1 magnitude. So that was interesting.
is that like from fracking?
I am not sure. I know that the only time that I have physically experienced an earthquake was in Wichita, and that was due to fracking, loosening things up, and you start getting more earthquakes because of a lot of the drilling, and because like Wichita is on the far south side of Kansas, all the way down right at like the Oklahoma border, so there's a lot of that fracking and drilling around there. We were actually in a hotel room, so yeah, that was a very odd experience. That I was like, that was weird, like the room like rattling, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
huh.
Did you actually get the back and forth, or did it feel like a wave?
um Gosh, it's so long ago, because this was
This
10
weekend?
years ago. No. So this is the Wichita one, the one that I experienced. The one that was in Nebraska, I never felt it.
Got it.
Because it was, gosh, at least a couple 100 miles away from me, I think.
Okay.
So it was not within range for me to experience. So the one that I had experienced was like 10 years ago in Wichita. The one over this weekend in Nebraska, far enough away from me that I didn't actually feel it, but it was definitely a news headline. So
I
yes,
bet. Yeah, you guys get them so infrequently out there.
yeah, because I think, gosh, I'm trying to think of the last time. It's been a while since there was a notable one. I want to say it was like further up north, but I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, that's my sidetracking side story. I was thinking about, you were talking about the devices for like knocking out cell towers and earthquake, and I was like, we had an earthquake recently, so
Mhm.
we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a couple. We haven't had a few. I'm knocking on wood right now. Haven't had a big one, or really even small ones recently. They've been in other places around us, but not in the Portland area. I've had a couple that I've experienced here. Both of them have been like, it felt like you went on a wave, just like one like hump. And then when I was in the Philippines for work once, I was there, and I think that one was a 5.9 or a 6.1, one of the two. And that we were up on the 18th building or 18th floor, sorry, of the building, and the damn building was just doing this back and forth for probably 20 minutes as it just kind of resettled, because they all sit on those hinges that there because of how many earthquakes that they have.
Right.
But my favorite memory, because I work, my day job is I help set up call centers, or at least I did at that point. And my favorite memory of that was one of the kids who apparently is deathly afraid of earthquakes, worst place to live in for earthquakes, dives under his desk and yells, "Earthquake!" But then his phone rings because he's, in a call center. And he literally reaches up over the desk, picks up his phone, brings his arm underneath the desk, puts it on. "Hi, this is blah, blah, blah. How can I help you?" He like goes into his whole spiel. And I looked at him afterwards, and his name was Kyle. And I looked at him and I'm like, "Kyle, you know what? Next time if an earthquake happens, it's okay if you miss that call. I'm okay with it."
Oh man.
Yeah.
Gotta admire the commitment to the work.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Anywho, and then lastly, I've been, this is just, Alex is a nerd. My wife and I are heading to Seattle this weekend. We're going to go to Emerald City Comic Con. So I've been putting together my cosplay outfit, which I'm excited about.
Ooh.
I There it is.
That's
Aha!
a suspense build.
I've got boxers. It's not really boxers; they're gym shorts, but with hearts that I drew on. They're for a book that I really love called Dungeon Crawler Carl. I've talked about it recently. So I'm dressing up as Carl. My wife is dressing up as the donut, the cat, which she has got some cat ears and a little princess crown because the cat's a princess. But it'll be fun. It'll be just goofy. So we're going to spend a couple of days in Seattle. Actually, hopefully, going to do brunch with Greg, one of our listeners and patrons.
Nice.
He's up there, so I'm hoping to reach out or get together with him. We're working on plans currently. So yeah, that's been my week. What about you, Alex? What have been going on for you?
Still a lot of stuff with the walnut tables. So, doing the layout for the dominoes that I'm using to put those boards together. And in going through some of those boards, I think I had mentioned previously that I had gotten a little bit of wood movement on some of those boards. And so I ended up doing a lot more dominoes than I had planned to make sure that everything kind of levels out. Because even though I've got essentially the four-way clamps to kind of help with that aspect of things, I like using the dominoes because it kind of mechanically forces stuff into place before you get all of the clamping together, and just evens things out so much better. So I had to, as a result of that, the setup that I have for dominoing is I'm using my MFT table, which has that nice flat MDF as the surface on there. That's the like dead flat surface that I have referencing. And so I'm making sure that as I am putting these dominoes in, I'm actually clamping down the piece of wood so it is flat. So then the reference point for the domino is flat as it is making that mortise, so that when those dominoes go in, they're actually lining up the way it's supposed to be, without any type of like curvature or wobble. Because if you think of like in a super extreme scenario, if it's like really, really bent and it's like teetering on top with the reference point, you may not have it line up as well as you want. It would probably be okay, but it's just one of those things where it's just like kind of taking it to the nth degree of making sure that it's like lining up exactly how I want it to.
Hey, I have a business opportunity for you. Since you have a domino, you should become like the Netflix of domino and like have like a mail rent out your domino. Like I have a table that I'm going to be building soon. I was just thinking about it last night going, I wonder if I know anybody in the area that's got a domino that I can use for the 4 dominoes I'm going to need for this table. I'm like, that should be a service.
I am too precious with my domino to lend it to anyone. Like I am like, I do not like lending out tools, and I generally try not to borrow tools from other people because I don't like that interaction, the weirdness that comes with if like something doesn't come back necessarily like right, and you're like, this thing is broken, so we need to talk about this kind of scenario. So it's just like,
well, that's when you make it a business. They sign a contract, all that stuff, you know.
No, we actually had when I was in doing a lot of stuff in the startup space in Lincoln, there was actually someone who did basically that thing for tools for a short duration of time. But they like, I mean, this is also when like everyone was doing, gosh, what's the name for it? It's like is gig economy the term for it, where it's like because like Ubers were becoming super popular, the Airbnbs, that kind of stuff. So they were actually doing some of that, but they weren't getting the volume. And I don't know if it was just because of the sample size of the space that they were in for like population wise, or if it was just like you weren't getting the amount of unique tools that people needed to put the effort into actually going on the platform and finding something. So, because you've got to build a marketplace of both the, you know, quote unquote buyers and sellers for that to all match up. So,
yeah.
But that was one of the things that they had in there was that like layer of liability that gets put in place if something does get damaged, and it's less of a gentleman's agreement at that time when a question gets raised about was this thing damaged. But anyway, that's my long answer of saying no. Because because the other thing too is that, like, setting it up and using it and knowing the right settings, and because the other thing too is that, like, getting to use it properly and not like wearing out the bits and all of that stuff. Because I mean they're pretty rigid machines, but it's like one of those things where it's just like, I mean, I probably baby my machines quite a bit compared to most. I do not abuse them in most cases. There's a couple scenarios where I'll abuse a tool, but it's usually like a Harbor Freight kind of tool scenario where it's like, this tool is kind of expendable as opposed to something that's a lot nicer and much more expensive. So, but yeah, so back to the domino stuff. The other thing that I was doing was testing out the actual domino tenons and how I wanted those to actually come together. And what I mean by that is making modifications to the tenon itself, because I prefer to chamfer the edges of the domino so that it goes into the mortise a lot more cleanly. Because if you've got that like 90-degree piece on there that's fitting in there nice and snug, if you don't have things like lined up properly and it gets ever so askew, like, it does not slide in easy at all. And for some of these where I'm putting together like 8 boards, not having one of them slide together and have to like frantically try and push boards together to glue stuff up, is like the glue is on the surface and it's should be pushed together and start setting. It just, like, the extra time that it takes to chamfer those definitely pays off during the glue up itself, because things just slide in a lot better. And then the other thing is I've got the it's one of those oh gosh, it's like the little dowel maker plates, but for dominoes. It's from DFM Toolworks, I believe. It just shaves off just a little bit around the outside edge so that it's not quite an exact fit, because that exact fit is like, it is super duper snug, and if you don't have really, really good alignment, it can be challenging to get everything to push together. And so I will use that, because the other thing that I'll do is sometimes I'll change the setting on the domino itself to cut the mortise a little bit wider, but then just not do anything with the domino, because I've got more play side to side on that, so I don't worry about the alignment quite as much. But in this scenario, I need it to line up super exact, so I'm keeping it tight on the domino, cutting the mortise, but I'm shaving down the tenon a little bit, so I have a little bit of play there. And that play is actually going to get tightened up by the 4-way clamp, because that's going to push everything together into alignment so that everything is nice and flush when I do the glue up for all of that stuff. So I've obviously thought through a lot of these, but sometimes it's just like aggravating over these like small details to make sure that when you do get to the glue up, there's not as many issues that you're running into. So and the other thing, going back to the chamfer on the edge of the dominoes, I use my oscillating spindle sander with that little like belt sander attachment on there. So I've got a flat surface that it's running the sandpaper on. And then I set the table angle to 45 and just push the domino up to it. And I get one long side, and then around the sides, the edges, the short side that's rounded over, I'll do one like basically like 45 degrees, 90 degrees, and then 45 degrees the other direction. So that technically be 135 degrees. And then you're back down to 180 as you flip over the domino and go through, and then you go do that to the other side as well. So it's chamfered all the way around, which I wish there was a quicker way to do that. But I just can't think of any that are quicker than that without some huge mechanized operation. Because what would be really nice if it was like almost like the Panta router, where it has the like setting where you've got the mirror image, and then it goes through, and you'd put in like a chamfer bit or whatever to just go around and just like zip around like a bunch, like line up a bunch of them and just zip around a bunch of them. Like that's the only scenario that I could think of that would potentially be faster, but it would be too much money spent on something I wouldn't use very often. So I'm stuck with doing each one by hand by the oscillating spindle sander. So yeah, and I didn't have quite as much as I wanted progress wise on the table because track started up, so I had to put together the workout schedule and all of that stuff for the track, and with that starting up, that kind of cuts into my time a little bit more, so I'm balancing out that time as well. So trying to get stuff in, and hopefully I can get stuff in to the glue up before I like head out for practice for the day, and then it can dry during practice or just, you know, overnight if I set it up right before hitting the hay for the night. So yeah, that's what I have going on.
Fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it.
I don't see any notes in here from you. Did you have anything that you broke this week?
I would say the only thing that I have, it's not technically like broken, but I kind of had to fix it, was the MFT table that I was talking about that has the MDF on there. There was an ever so slight amount of finish that had gotten on there that had kind of like globbed a little bit that affects the flatness of it. So I did have to go back through with the razor on some of those spots and shave off that area. Because this is, I mean, when I talk about me being particular about my stuff, like this is one of those scenarios where I'm very particular about flat surfaces that I use for like referencing, because that's something where it's like if I'm doing like a finish assembly of something, like I want to put it on there so that I know if I'm setting down something with legs and it's wobbling, then I know like, okay, something's off with me, not with the surface that it's actually set on. So, I didn't get true flat like in Rick and Morty, but you know, I got close enough. There some of the spots I dug in, and I may have dug in just like a little bit more, but the negative effect of having something that's like almost like slightly pitted in that scenario doesn't really do anything because it's such a small surface area that it's fine in this scenario, as opposed to a bump that if it goes over that, it throws a whole bunch of stuff off. So that's the one thing that I had this past week.
Yeah, I didn't really have much go wrong in the shop, luckily. I do have some antennas that I had bought for these things, the mesh networks that I'm buying, and these things suck. They, as soon as you plug them in, the little pin inside that fits inside snaps right off. And
are they the little like copper pins that have the little like pokey end that like they're like the size of like a grain of rice?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those.
Yeah, those... and so whatever this brand is, it's a piece of junk, so I'm returning those. But
so is there a port on the side of the device that like snaps into?
It screws into. It's a small
it screws
coaxial. In. Yeah, it's a small coaxial port.
I was thinking of a different one. The one that I'm talking about is like if you were to take a grain of rice, like that's how big the snap connector is.
Oh no, this is even smaller. See if it'll see it, the little hole there. That's where it goes in.
No, I'm talking the whole snap connector is the size of that coax hole. Typically that stuff is like it's directly on the motherboard or whatever circuit board the device is on, and those are a true pain in the butt to snap on properly. I've had to do that before.
So these are junk. And besides that, honestly, I'm just slowly breaking my wallet. I bought a whole bunch of wood this week, which I didn't need most of it. I needed a big chunk of maple for a coffee table I'm doing for my tattoo artist. And so I had ordered that. And while I was there, Mark was like, "Oh, I've got all this elm that I will sell to you for really cheap." And I'm like, "How cheap is really cheap?" And he's like, $2 a board foot. And I'm like, I can't pass that up. So I got like 50 board feet.
Do you know what kind of subspecies of elm it is, or just that it's
I
elm?
don't, because he doesn't. Um,
Oh, he
it
didn't know.
was no, it was a log that was when he bought a bunch of walnut logs. It was like hiding under the pile to like fill the pile. And so he didn't know it until they were slapping him up, and it was like, this isn't walnut.
Yeah.
um,
Have you worked with
yeah,
elm before?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, very open grain. But I like the dark grain it has that comes through the light wood. So I'll use it for like cribbage boards and such because the pieces are good enough for my needs. I don't, I'm not making, furniture out of it. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, that's all I have. All right. So my first one this week is Badland Dwellers. Just made the most adorable bug rock is what they're calling it. They're calling it Crussel the Bug Rock Boy, BOI. And it's like a mix between a crab and a bug and a rock. They all had together a baby together. It's got little claws and a mouth and cute eyes, and it's just made from layered woods and then some sculpting and just scrap woods. The prime example of just using some scraps to make something fun just for the heck of making something fun. I really appreciated that, which so much of us, especially me, like right now, I'm so focused on business and selling and doing things that route that I just forget that sometimes it's just fun to make something because it's enjoyable. So I
Yeah,
thought that was
utilizing
really
your
cool.
free will on
Yeah, yeah,
just something
exactly.
that's just fun and whimsical. It
Yeah.
actually it vaguely reminds me of there's an episode on Futurama where they create an airline and then they like crash land, and then I think I don't know if the episode is called like Borax the Kid or something like that, but there's this like creature that like it's a rock creature that's made out of these layers that it made me kind of think of that. So it's throwback to that reference. As some people know,
Absolutely.
I love my Futurama. So
Oh, me too.
okay, first one that I've got, Blue Cypress Botanicals. So this one is pretty interesting. So this one that they have is actually a corn husk doll. So for those who are not aware, corn husk dolls, you take essentially the dried leaves from corn and craft them into just like a little doll that kids play with, or are, you know, culturally like significant in some form or fashion. And so the one that they did like takes it to a very high artistic degree where I'm not sure. I'm pretty confident that they dyed some of the husk to get some of the color that they wanted of this kind of like bluish green color to make the dress for this corn husk doll. And then I think they put some seashells and other stuff around there to kind of like adorn the dress. Um, and then they had them holding a uh, broom that it was actually they used the feather of a peacock. If you know the very end of that feather that kind of has that circular eye shape on there, that was like the bristle portion of that broom. So it's just a really cool piece. I think there is some cultural significance behind it, but I don't know too much on that end, but I can definitely appreciate the craftsmanship of the piece that they made.
Mm-hmm. My next one is, and again, me and my name's Mr. Electroidine. Posted a reel of a bunch of minimalist light fixtures made from live edge wood. They're just simple and beautiful, but one of the things that really caught me is the bulbs that they're using. It has the filament inside is a double helix to make it look like DNA inside the light bulb, and it's that old style filament glows
Yeah,
very
kind of the
orange,
Edison
but
style with
the Edison style, yep.
tungsten really
But yeah,
illuminates it.
the light fixtures were just plain gorgeous. And every one that they posted was one that I'm like, yep, I want that one in my house. Yep, I want that one in my house. So makes me think maybe I should do something electrical, but electricity also scares me. So
Yeah, 120 is fine. It just tingles. As long as you're not doing, yeah, it just tingles is all. As long as you're not, doing anything above 120, you're all right. I've had I've dealt with stuff above that, and you double check your wiring as you're working with those cables. They actually had, I know I had a colleague that I can't remember. It was like in a building or something like that. Some of the electrical that was running in, I can't remember if it was like 240 or something higher, but like either a mouse or a rat like got in there and touched the terminals and just like exploded. Like there was nothing left of it. That's why they didn't know it. Like they think it was like a mouse or a rat, but there wasn't really anything left to like figure out what it was, or it's just probably like dust or ashes or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's probably the only thing that could stretch across it and complete the circuit for the brief moment that it took to turn it into vapor. So electricity will kill you, kids, if it's given the chance. But stick that fork in the wall outlet and it'll just tingle. It'll be fine. Alrighty. Next one that I have is from Tim Noon Furniture Design. Maybe it's Tim No One. I don't know. But anyway, so they made this really beautiful console table. So bear with me as I try and describe this. So think of your general like kind of rectangular table, but for the legs on the sides, what they did are these kind of pillars, if you will. But instead of like a circular shape, what they did was a what's the pronunciation of it? Rouleau triangle, or like a convex curve equilateral triangle. For my Motorhead fans, a Wankel engine, the rotary piston, that kind of shape. So take a triangle and then just kind of like blow it up with some air so the outside edges kind of like puff out a little bit. So that's what it looked like from the top down. So not only did they have that profile shape coming up from the bottom, but they also had more of that shape on the top. So it gave that appearance of cutting through the actual tabletop itself. So it was just a very striking but yet simplistic, like nice curved lines that were, I'd say, fairly minimalist, but it just looked really, really stunning and I want to say effortless looking, because of the simplicity of the design, but the very good execution of it.
My next one is from Greg.obj. Another fourth axis CNC project. I love seeing these because it's something I'm very interested in and trying to learn myself. But so to see somebody out there doing some is great. So they made a Trussett patterned vase. So out of some really beautiful oak. And a Trussett pattern is, if you haven't seen that before, think of like a bunch of pipes intersecting around each other in a pattern. Kind of the best way I can describe it.
Is it kind of like when you like weave, if you were to weave something that was like the size of a straw? That was cylindrical?
Basically. So yeah, anyways, they made that. It's got a hidden drip tray on the inside, and their ceramic pot for their plant goes on the inside. So you don't have to worry about water and wood rotting and whatnot, but it was just really pretty. And a really cool use of the fourth axis project on CNC.
Cool. Next one that I have, Greg Bat, his handle is GH Bat. So he made this really beautiful jewelry box case. And so it's rectangular in shape, so it's wider than it is deep. And the top of it has this really nice rounded over profile on the top edges of that long portion of that rectangular shape, which I think he said that he just shaped that portion by hand until it like looked how he wanted it to look. And And so this was made out of bird's eye maple, mostly for the top and the bottom pieces, and then on the sides, what he did was this kind of uh, basically 3 layers. So we had, I think it was sapele, maple, and then sapele to give that dark, light, dark before it went into the actual lid that lifted. So you've got these nice sides on there, and then when it lifts, those sides still stay in position. So it just looked really nice and well done and just very appeasing to the eye, even though it was fairly simple in terms of like the form and shape, but you could tell that like time was spent to get it to that like kind of nice organic shape for that curvature. So good job, Greg.
Nice. My next one comes from our good friend Yessie over at Knock on Wood. She just fulfilled her largest order to date, a ton of mobile bar carts for Inuit Tax or TurboTax of all companies. Like giant company doing a giant order from her like that. I'm just super excited for her. So
like literally it probably like I'm pretty sure the curb weight actually probably added up to a ton with given how many they had placed orders for.
Oh, I'm sure. Like she showed a picture of them all in her garage and she could not walk. She was like crawling over them to get around in the garage because of how many were stuffed in there. So, yeah, I'm so excited that she's, knocking it out of the park with some of these projects. So great job.
All right. Last one that I've got is from Merg Works, and that's all E's for the vowels on that one. So Merg and then Works is with an E as well. And so what they specialize a lot in are those little like hand brooms, the ones that they use it's got that organic, like, I don't know, it's not corn husk, but it's like corn fibers or something along those lines. And so what they have done is they have taken that to a whole new level where as they're bundling these together, they have selected the color on each of these fibers so the end profile creates a picture on the top. So think about like when you get the like rolls of cookie dough that have like the pattern that you can see on the end, and so when you cut them all up, they all have like the same pattern. Think of like that, but with the end profile of this brush. And so like we're not talking like 1 or 2 colors. We're talking probably something past like the like 16-bit amount of colors in order to get like the shading that they want. The one in particular that I had seen was this landscape of the full moon kind of in the dark sky with some like stars placed, and then it had some mountains with a river coming through those, kind of cutting through those mountains. So really pretty landscape, and they've done plenty of other profiles that are equally astounding, but the amount of patience that it takes to get all of those fibers in their right spot, and also I don't know what they do to get all of the colors they want, if they just have like a palette of colors they want and they kind of select from, or if they're doing custom dyeing for each of these types of brushes. But overall, just a stunning level of craftsmanship.
Nice. Which is, always amazing to see everybody else's work and the level of craftsmanship and everything else that they're doing. Cool. I actually have 2 more. So the next one I have, I'm not going to butcher your name. I'm sorry. It's FISSO design.
Underscore design. Underscore design.
Underscore design. Yes.
If we're getting technical on all of the characters.
Yes. They made one of the cool, so I love just, again, whimsy. I love whimsy stuff. And they made a hand crank wooden scenery box. So on top of the box is a whole bunch of mushrooms and bugs, all playing musical instruments. And then you crank a hand crank on the side. And then inside the box, which has an open front, you can see all these gears moving, wooden gears moving up and down. And it moves all the bugs and the mushrooms in their hands, and they're playing drums and dancing back and forth. It's so cool. they do a whole bunch of designs like this. And again, I love whimsy. I love just fun stuff. So that was really cool. And then lastly, Justin Davies. I'm an ice cream fiend. I have my own ice cream machine because of this man. He's back at it again, making more ice cream from wood. This time, however, he decided to try and poison himself, sort of. He used chamfer wood. That's CAMPHOR, chamfer wood. It's the oldest known ice cream flavor, over 1,000 years ago in China. This was originally made, and it's more of like he described the taste as like a warm cinnamon nutmeg taste. But it's deadly in large quantities. So luckily he just had a very, very small amount. He made a comment he would have to have like gallons of it to have an upset stomach, but
just like inhaling apple seeds, right? Technically have cyanide in them, but you'll be okay.
Yeah, you have to just chug them by the gallon. So anyways, that was my last one.
Also, before we move on, with your whimsy, let's see, who was that again? That was the one you spelled out. Staccafisso design, something like that. I'm brave enough to try. It would be really cool. And how you were describing that. Did you ever play Little Big Planet on the PlayStation?
Yes.
It makes me think, like, when you were describing that, like, it brought back that memory of Little Big Planet because the animation style of it has that similar type of, when you're talking like the hand crank and the type of like, because like for those who have not played Little Big Planet or any of its sequel games, it's very like, think about, because I think there are partially like levels in there where it's kind of like Da Vinci style like machines and stuff that are in there that are animating some of these things as you're playing through all of these levels. But that would be really fun to do, like one of those hand crank versions, but with like some scenery from Little Big Planet. And now that I think of that, this would be a really fun game to play with my son. I've played it with my wife, and there was some yelling and shouting in that co-op mode. But since I've since beaten all the levels on there, it'll be fine to just skip ahead on some of this stuff. Anyway.
My wife and I can't play games together because I'm very competitive and she doesn't really do a lot of games. So when we play a game, it's usually she's playing a game, and then when she gets frustrated at the level, she hands me the remote to beat that level, and then I hand it back to her for her to go on and do her own thing. That we did this with the Harry Potter, Hogwarts Legacy, and also the Zelda Breath of the Wild and games. So
yes, I do get very competitive. When I was younger, I definitely made my sister cry when we played Monopoly. So there is no room for mercy when I am playing games. I am ruthless, which is ironic because my mom's name is Ruth.
But and on that note,
I'm gonna rub you out, see? Rub you out.
Like rubbing finish. Because tonight's main topic is about finish.
Sure. That's exactly what that soundbite was about.
Hey, it was from Looney Tunes, and I gotta tell you, that has not aged well.
Yeah. Was that Yosemite Sam?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And he was talking to
I did watch
Duck.
plenty of Looney Tunes, as you could tell.
Well, so tonight's main topic is about choosing finish for your projects. We've talked about finishes before, but we want to talk a little bit more because, finish is one of those questions that everyone has. Like, when do you choose the right finish for this project and so on? I'm a man of simple uses. I only use really 3 finishes, and I use them for 3 specific like groupings of projects, from anything that touches food to anything that's going to be played with to furniture and decor. And like, that's it. Like, those are those uses equal 3 different finishes for me. And we can get into that more. But Alex, how do you approach, choosing the right finish?
Yeah, because I'm in a similar camp where there's a couple of finishes that I gravitate towards, but it's a lot more about the decision making process of kind of how we got there. Because sometimes that process of choosing what you actually need for that project may not be the same use case as the stuff that we're looking at for some of our projects. Because one thing that I talk with people about in the projects is kind of the use cases of what stuff will be in. And what I mean by that is like understanding, all right, are they getting this coffee table and they've got kids and dogs and other animals, or are these empty nesters that keep a pristine home and this thing is like nary going to be touched but with gentle hands? So taking in some of those considerations can help you choose the finish for those projects. And
Right? Is it going
sometimes
to be
that's
inside, outside?
right. Yeah, because inside versus outside usage, because sometimes it's more obvious in a lot of those scenarios, but sometimes asking those extra questions can kind of help quell some of those issues down the road potentially for just how the item ages over time, and how it might be more durable for what is needed. So usually that really that pulls you in two directions of making whatever the piece is aesthetically pleasing versus making it durable enough to handle the situation that it's in, because those are the two opposing sides typically, because generally speaking a lot of your finishes that look really nice aren't necessarily the most durable of all the options, and some of that comes from whatever that finish is applied, light being able to get through and actually reflect off the wood to actually show those colors. So the thicker that finish is, the less light can get through to be able to reflect back and see how pretty the wood actually is. So that's it's just a huge generalization, but that kind of holds true for a lot of them. Because like if you're doing something that's more oil based, it's more likely to soak into the wood and it's going to show that figure really, really well. But
It's
it's
also more
generally
likely to yellow over time.
right. Yeah, that's the other consideration too, is how that finish, even if it doesn't endure any type of like mechanical stress on it, sometimes depending on the type of finish, you'll get some yellowing or ambering over time, which can happen, with or without UV exposure, because obviously if you're doing anything outdoors, there's going to be maintenance on it in terms of keeping it looking nice. Because even if you're doing, sorry, let me back up here a little bit. So on the indoor versus the outdoor side of things, uh, a lot of people go kind of more like the oil based route, where they'll do more of like a tung oil thing, which is a very popular thing to do if you had like genuine teak for the outdoor furniture.
Oil and
And then
beeswax usually, because the beeswax helps seal it and avoid the moisture.
right, yeah. And then on the other end, you're doing like a spar varnish, where you're building up layers on there. And what's happening is, as you're building up layers for that finish, as time goes on, it's going to peel away at those layers of finish, and you will need to reapply more finish to essentially build up those layers. And so that's like for the people who do a bunch of like Adirondack chairs or outdoor chairs. And then, obviously like Total Boat is in that game because they have a lot of like spar varnish and other things, because they have like marine grade varnish for boats, and that stuff is always under punishment from whatever elements. And so people who have boats understand the maintenance upkeep that it takes to keep something from succumbing to the elements.
I would say also to remember that varnish and marine grade and that spar varnish section are all not as forgiving as tung oil, and some of the other oil finishes are. for example, if you have a piece of wood that isn't bone dry or has a slightly wet spot, and it gets you seal it with that plastic, and then it gets sit in the sun, you could get some cloudiness underneath in the finish itself, because that moisture is getting released from the wood and creates a little air pocket. Steams it, basically. I've actually unfortunately had that from one of my very first outdoor tables I made for somebody. The wood just had one spot that wasn't dried. I had dried that sucker twice through a kiln because it came out the first time not as low as I wanted it, so I sent it back to the kiln dryer again, and then it was registering on theirs just fine, but it had one little spot that wasn't perfect still, and it was enough that like a month after it getting out in the outdoors, she sent me a photo of this, like, I don't know, hockey puck sized, pattern of moisture that was inside the finish. So just make sure, like, especially with that type of finish, if it's going to be outside, that you have bone dry wood and you're not trapping moisture in it.
Right. And that also does bring up the question of not only prepping the surface of the wood for that particular finish, but also in the scenario where you are combining a couple of things, making sure that whatever you're combining plays well with each other, because like you had mentioned, like putting like a wax layer on top of oil to kind of help with having more of like a sacrificial layer for durability, because like once you put that wax on top of there, it's not like you can go back and put oil to refresh it because you've got that layer of wax that's there. Like you would need to remove that layer of wax consistently in order to reapply more oil. So that can also factor into when you're doing that maintenance, to make sure that if you're refreshing it, getting it to be consistent,
and to make sure that the whatever things you're putting together do actually work together. You're not going to put that spar finish on there and then put wax on top of it, because it's not going to settle. It's not going to soak in at all, because you have a layer of plastic already on the wood. So the wax will do nothing to literally just wipe away whenever somebody puts their hand on it.
Right. Yeah. And that brings up shellac, given that it's known very well as the universal binder in between different layers of finish. If you're mixing something or doing something kind of I don't want to say off the rails, but just like if you're not sticking with just one finish, that's the one that you can use to bind different layers. And I personally, I may have had one project with shellac, but it was probably a super long time, and I can't even remember. We're talking like maybe in like a high school shop class or something like that, because I just haven't wanted to use shellac for projects, just because one thing that people know on that one is, even though it is like basically a food safe, like used on toys a lot because you can gnaw on it and be just fine, but it does not tolerate, if memory serves me correct, alcohol on the surface. So like if you're doing a bar top with shellac and someone spilled their beer, that would be bad news bears, because it would interact with that surface of that finish and break it down, and you would have problems, to say the least.
Fun fact: do you know what U.S. candy we eat regularly that has shellac in it?
Oh, I was watching this recently. Is it jelly beans?
M&Ms.
Skittles? M&Ms. Yep.
M&Ms.
Yeah.
They don't melt in your hand because of shellac.
Yes. So yes, shellac is bug poop, is what it is.
It is. It is a beetle poop.
My wife actually sent me. It was one of those like more informational reels where they were talking about shellac, and they did a really good job describing how they make it. Which, long story short, what happens is you make it so that they those bugs are going on and living on trees, and that excrement that gets put onto the branches, that gets basically farmed, gets scraped off and then goes through process of eliminating all sorts of impurities and whatnot, until it's down to that kind of amberish color, and it gets used for a host of variety of things,
Mm-hmm.
like
From candy coatings to nail polish to it's a host of different things that shellac is used for.
yeah.
It's actually one of the, I think they said, the most prolific thing or like farmable item that we use today in the modern world because of how many different uses there are of it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not one that I particularly use just because I don't have a whole lot of use cases for it. But I mean,
I
you
used
can
to use
definitely
it
make
a
it look.
lot.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I know that there are people that like shellac all the way, and you can make stuff look really really good with it, because um, you can get, I believe that so French polishing is the act of basically coating up something with shellac to get it to a really really high sheen. So if you see something that is old, that is like really really shiny, if it's like furniture or something like that, like there's a good chance that something like that is shellac, especially if it's like a surface that you like put your hands on a lot or something like that, because you can get a nice sheen by building up layer and layer and layer of that shellac. um
Yeah, when I used to do a lot of wood turning, shellac was my go-to at that point, which most people use because again, food safe and but also because it dries so quickly, and then you can immediately move on to buffing. You can put up layers on it very quickly without having to worry about it. So it is a wood turner's friend in a lot of cases.
mhm. Yeah. So yeah, we've talked a little bit about varnish, which um it's more of the kind of like plasticky um version of finish, because like if you think of your like generic desks or something like that, where it's kind of like it's you know that it's wood, but it's got the really hard plastic kind of like top to it, that's going to be probably closer to your um varnish for those scenarios.
Or
um
lacquer.
right, yeah, or lacquer, because lacquer is another one that does really well, because I can't remember, because generally speaking lacquer is sprayed more often than not,
No,
right?
it's also a brush finish. It was originally a brush
Okay.
finish. It's polyurethane, so
Okay.
it's another plastic.
Gotcha.
But
Yes,
I know I personally use a spray lacquer. I don't use a brush because I don't want to wait. And so I use and for anyone who's interested, I use the Prolux / Deft. It was Deft, now it's Prolux brand. But they have a satin spray lacquer that, in my opinion, is the best spray can or rattle can finish on the market for durability, but also just for ease of application. It's that they have a superior spray nozzle compared to anybody out there. It's very wide as far like horizontal wide, but also then just even across the whole board.
yeah, and
Not
I've done
sponsored.
that one as well, a few times on projects, because that's like the one that go to, like if you need a quick finish that's got good durability, like that's the one that you're going to use. And if, I mean, honestly, if there probably was a finish that I learned how to spray properly, it would probably be lacquer, because it's just got really good properties. It's the only challenging thing is that the skill level needed to like spray and get a really good finish does take a little bit of learning. But boy, if you dial it down, you get really really nice results, and you can get a really nice high sheen. Because I think Zach over at Double K, he um, sprays a lot of lacquer for a lot of his projects, and they look gorgeous. Um, and obviously, that's like you can always take it to someone to to spray it for the finish, but knowing what type of finish for them to spray obviously helps you out. If you know what you want that person to spray, to know what it is that you want on that project if you're taking it to a place to outsource it. But yeah, so let's see. Varnish, shellac, lacquer. We talked a little bit about oil-based. I like oil-based generally because it gets the best look in terms of the figure most of the time. You can still get a really good look for the other ones, but I mean, I really like how the oil finish looks, because I'm in a similar camp for you, where I use the hard wax oil a lot of times on my projects. And the interesting thing is that even between different brands of hard wax oils, I'll use different ones for different applications, because some of them have a much more thicker formula and some of them have a thinner formula. So it gives you a different amount of working time as you are applying and buffing in that finish. Because they're pretty dummy proof as long as you work them in and then wipe off the excess. Because if you pay attention and wipe off the excess, that's probably the most difficult portion of working with hard wax oils, just making sure you don't have any clumps left behind. So then you get a nice smooth finish. Because the challenge with a lot of the other finishes where you're with your varnishes especially is because you're building up those layers, you've got to sand in between in order to make sure that those layers are nice and consistent. Because if you're building up a layer and you've got, it's like the Princess and the Pea, where it's like you've got a pea at the very bottom and you're putting on mattresses, like you can that error compiles on itself and actually becomes worse as time goes on. So that's
sitting
why
on a baseball.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one consideration there is the amount of patience that you have, and to be able to sand that stuff back in between layers. And you can definitely get stuff looking very, very nice. It just kind of depends on the look that you're going for, because a lot of times with those oil-based finishes, the hard wax oil-based finishes, you don't get quite as high of a sheen with those, which is kind of where some of the wax comes into play. But with your varnishes and lacquers, you can get a really nice high sheen with those. So if that's what's needed for the project, like they want super duper shiny, then that's the one that works really well for achieving that. And there are also some water-based finishes. I've used, oh gosh, what was it? It was from General Finishes. It's a water-based finish. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head here. Oh, what was it? I'll have to Google it. Was it a urethane?
Well, on that note,
Enduravar, that's what it was. Enduravar. So that one is technically a water-based one. It does decent at showing the figure through, not quite as good as oil-based, but that's a film finish that I've used a few times a while back. And then, of course, stains aren't really finish, but they're for treating ahead of time to get the color that you want and then putting the finish on after the fact. One other thing to throw on here on top of all of these that some people will use is, which has become much more popular with hard wax oils, are ceramic coatings, which you had alluded to earlier about if something underneath with the wood is not right, that stuff showing up. I've actually had that happen before, where I put down the hard wax oil and it hadn't quite fully cured. And when I put the ceramic coating on, immediately it looked fine, but it was after like a week or two, it kind of got this cloudy white kind of thing going on, which meant that that oil-based finish underneath was still curing underneath, and it caused some of that milky color to come through. So again, saying the same thing about when you're mixing finishes, knowing when they need to be able to cure and how they interact, so that you don't get that stuff happening later on and have to redo a bunch of work, because going that close to the finish line with a workpiece and then having to redo the finish definitely sucks. So, because I've been there.
We've all been there.
Yeah, and sometimes it just takes practice on some of those smaller projects.
And if you haven't been there, you will be.
Yes. It's not a threat, it's a promise. And does epoxy technically count as a finish if you're doing the tabletop?
No.
It's plastic. It's just a thicker version of.
I mean, yeah, it's basically a finish. Tabletop epoxy is a finish, but no, I will not count it. It's just coating it in plastic.
Yeah,
at least.
It's not
I was gonna say at least
do.
Like poly and urethane, like, or in varnish, sorry, and they at least have some kind of skill required to put it on, because even like to get the brush strokes out, to get, make sure you're not getting dust in it everywhere. Freaking epoxy, especially tabletop, is so dang easy. The only thing you have to do is just with a torch. Sorry, listeners. And that's it, and you're good.
Well, and you got to have it level, because if it's not level, then you'll get thicker on one side, or it's just going to run off, and you're just going to waste a bunch of it.
Right. Yeah.
So we're talking,
but yeah,
not like the river table pours. We're talking once you're done, putting a layer on top that basically seals it up, which is, it's basically what you see on like a bar top at,
it's
like
the original thing
like that
epoxy was used for, which was restaurant bar tops and I mean, not the original, but the original in furniture making, basically.
Yeah, making its foray and that way, because with such a thick layer of plastic, it can take a beating. It can take stuff hitting it, because it just physically has more thickness to it to be able to handle it. Because if you're thinking like with your other finishes, I mean, coming back to the M&M example, where it's like, if you apply enough force, it'll crunch and break through down to your layer below. So the thicker that layer is, the less it has to like, the less likely it is to like crunch when you're getting like a dent or whatever, because we've all seen it happen where it like, especially if it's like some type of poly that has the pigmentation added in, that it gets hit, and then the true color of the wood comes through after it's hit, and then it looks super glaring and obvious that it got damaged as a result, which is more of a get a better wood selection that's tougher than necessarily a failure on the finishes part.
For example, the table I'm going to be doing coming up here later this year, a couple of months, is a table for my tattoo artist, and I will be coating it in epoxy on the top, because it's going to be their coffee table for their tattoo shop. So I want one easily cleanable surface, blood and all that. But two, also, if people put their feet up on it, they put drinks or beer or whatever. Like, I just want it to be easily cleanable and durable, so they don't have to ever worry about it.
Yeah, the epoxy top is the nuclear option of durability.
Yep.
So it.
Yeah, and I'll actually probably do it in an epoxy top, and I will put a ceramic coating on top of it too.
Nice.
Yeah. For me, I would just say, I've kind of talked about this before. I really just have a couple of simple uses for me. Anything that is going to touch with food or is going to be handled a lot. So like my dice box games or D&D dice boxes and that kind of stuff, I just use tongue oil and a wax finish, like a beeswax finish on top of that, because it's simple, it's food safe, and it's going to last a long time. For furniture, I almost always go with hard wax, unless the occasion, like the tattoo one, calls for something stronger. In that case, I'll do a bar top. And then everything else, my decor, my board games, literally pretty much everything else uses that spray lacquer, because I just like the way it looks. It provides enough of a durable coat for something that's not going to be handled consistently. So yeah, I'm a simple boy.
Yeah, and finding the finding the use cases for the stuff that you'll probably be making will help you kind of narrow down to the few that you're most comfortable with using. Because the other thing that comes into play as well is ventilation, because a lot of these can have some VOCs in them and can have some odors, so it can also reduce your options if that becomes an issue, if you're not able to do it in a place that can be ventilated. Because I know that a lot of people have a garage space that they can do, and that's good enough because you can open the garage door for those fumes to be able to move on and not linger behind. But for someone like me, where I'm working in the basement, like those fumes will literally go into the house. So it's like I don't do anything that is gonna generate a bunch of VOCs, because then it's gonna be lingering in my house even as it cures. It's gonna linger.
It's funny. Because I don't have kids, I'm okay with that, because I'll if I finish a table and I need the hard wax, the dry stuff, I'll move that into our library / the room I have my laser in, and I'll just shut the doors and I'll crack the window up there so it has some ventilation, and then I'll just leave it for a week, because my garage doesn't stay dust free enough to have a spot for that table to be curing for a week.
Yeah, that's true as well, because cure times come into play with how long you have something to wait and cure, and keeping it clean, because that's one of the other things too with especially with your epoxy. If you're doing something that's clear, like if you get a fly that lands on it or dust or other stuff, it's going to cloudy up and make that top look crappy. So the more that you can do to keep that environment sterile can help. At least sterile for the duration that it takes to get through that like working cure time on it.
Yeah.
'Cause I
Luckily,
can't remember
with
off the top of my head.
epoxy, it's bar top's fairly quick. You'll be done in a couple hours. But like Rubio Monocoat, that's 7 days. Polyurethane, the oil especially, that's at least 48 hours, sometimes 72. So.
Yeah, and I think, is it varnish or lacquer that like takes like a month to get to like true like full
That's
hardness?
varnish.
Yeah,
Varnish. Lacquer's very quick, especially if you use like spray and it's pretty thin, which is why very quick.
Yeah, because especially if you're doing like poly or whatever, like if you're using the, oh gosh, what's the it's right here. Like if you're using like any of the like Minwax stuff, usually like a majority of their stuff that people get is a poly, and that'll take like a month to like fully cure. But because a lot of times you'll see advertised on the back, because I think, gosh, because on some of the hard wax oils, I think most of them fall in that 7 to 10 days, but you should probably wait till like 2 weeks on a lot of those, just to make sure, especially if you're putting on clear coat on top of it, of that ceramic coating, just to make sure that everything is good to go. But like, honestly, like if you take, and I've had some projects too where I've finished it and then like a day or two later, it's like delivering it or putting it in, like it's gonna be fine, like it's soft to the touch, it's just gonna off gas a little bit. And the odor isn't that bad on the hard wax oils most of the time. But the VOCs, like there's technically not VOCs, but there's an odor with the hard wax oil. So as long as because my wife is very particular about smells and odors, and because of our house being super old and the wood floors, like those smells seep through that very easily, so you can smell it in the rest of the house. But anyway, like you can, like, depending on which brand of hard wax oil it is, like Rubio tacks up pretty darn quick, and you can work with it and handle it relatively soon. Some of the other ones you'd probably want like at least a day of time to make sure that everything that is seeped out and wiped off is already done and you're able to handle it. So those ones don't tack up quite as quickly, and I think that's because Rubio uses they're thicker formulation, so that's why it tacks up a lot more. Because some of the other ones that have a thinner formulation, like the it was rustic lumber, which is now wood daddy finish. Like that's a much thinner, and it takes longer, but it also gives you more working time. So that's like something that I'll put if I need hard wax oil on something that's really large. That's what I'll use because it has more working time. So it allows me to go back and wipe off excess, and I have to babysit a little bit longer, but I'm less likely to get globs of finish that hang around or seep back out of the pores. Because that's another consideration too, is how porous your wood is, and how much of that finish it's soaking up can determine how many coats of finish you end up putting on and how well it absorbs that. Because I think some of your film finishes are not going to be quite as forgiving on a more open poured wood. So you're going to need more layers to basically fill stuff in and get that so that it's nice and
or use a sanding sealer.
Right.
Yep. Anything else to add?
As Forrest Gump would say, that's all I have to say about that.
Well, on that note.
Good news, everyone.
So, maker news this week. Do you have any maker news?
One notable change is that the Midwest Maker Meetup has been switched from May 2nd to the 16th of May. So they saw that one of the like biggest events of the year in Omaha was going to be the same weekend, and it basically made hotel rooms like 3 times more expensive. So they're like, yeah, we'll move it so that it's affordable for everyone to get an actual room who's coming in. It doesn't matter for me because I live close enough that I'll just drive. But for people that are coming in out of state and staying overnight at a place, that'll make it easier for them to find a hotel room within a reasonable rate.
Yeah. I was trying to get it to say maker news back. It keeps the thing back there keeps failing every time I try and load it. Yeah, it does. Anywho. And remember, we have CNC Summit. I talked about at the top of the show, but April 4th or 3rd and 4th tickets right now are $50 still, but they will be going up in March up to the final price of the $80. So get that early bird pricing as you can. Again, link is in my bio on my Instagram page. But it's also just free to attend the day of. I, besides teaching my one class, will be in 2 live panels as well. I will be in the year 1 of a business and how I actually learned CNC. So there'll be a couple of fun panels of people talking. I don't know who else is on the panel with me, but there are other people.
So is that how you really learn the CNC? Is it going to be like CNC companies hate him for this one weird trick? Is it
yeah,
clickbaity like that?
No. It's going to be, I watched Andy Bird on YouTube a lot.
Yeah, YouTube's usually the answer.
Right? It's almost always the answer. And then just doing it, playing around, making mistakes, So,
as Miss Frizzle would say, make mistakes, get messy.
Exactly. And on that note, you know who else likes to get messy?
Lionel Messi?
Our patrons.
Oh, that's right. Yes, the messiest of patrons have already gone to patreon.com/whatyourmakingshow and supported the show. So if you want to be messy like them, get your hands dirty and become a patron of the show and keep this madness going.
Well, in that case, remember...
In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night-night. You eat bug poop with your M&Ms.